Hey guys, what's going on? It is Ash here coming at you today with another Pro Player Tips episode, this time with none other than Jordan. He's been on the channel 4 or 5 times now, but never in person, well, at least in voice. So guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome in Jordan. Alright guys, I am here with the man that you have all been waiting for. It is Jordan. Jordan, finally, you've been on my channel, you know, your gameplay has been on my channel for a long time now, probably, what, like 4 or 5 episodes, and this is the first time that you've actually came on voice chat. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. How about you?
I'm just excited to have you on. We're going to be talking about a Hog Cycle deck of all things, but before we get into that, we probably should address why am I having Jordan on talking about Hog Cycle when you are known and famous for your Trifecta play? So why don't you start off by telling us about why you're not playing Trifecta in the current meta?
You know, I love the Trifecta, but with the recent update, they had those 2 changes to the Poison and the Elixir Collector, and that kind of nerfed it in a big way. Poison is really good for slowing down the enemy units, giving you that extra damage you need, and the Collector being the 6 Elixir, that gives a lot of opportunity for the opponent to Fireball or Lightning your Collector and get a positive Elixir trade for themselves.
Yeah, that's definitely true. 2 cards that are a real big part of the Trifecta deck took a big hit. So, is there any version of Trifecta that you could recommend to people, maybe with some substitutions for the Elixir Pump and the Poison?
You know, I actually saw a couple of versions of it, and one of the versions that I thought would work really well was a Skeleton Army for the Elixir Collector, because of the great defense it gives.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the Fireball for the Poison. Just gives you that good damage.
Yeah, and you're still making out okay with those Elixir trades too. It's not like you're losing the pump, but obviously the Skeleton Army is much cheaper, and Fireball is not that big of a deal either. So I can see how that could work. Maybe we'll have you on for a new Trifecta at some point in the future if you're down for it.
Sounds good.
Also, got to ask before we get into the deck here, and then we'll hop into the deck in a second, but were you nervous when you played against Dylan and or Zed?
Yeah, I was pretty nervous going into it, but I just kept a good game plan before I went in, that I just need to focus on what I need to do in the match to give myself good Elixir trades and not get behind too far in damage.
Yeah, man, you did a good job. I mean, if I remember correctly, weren't they both 2-1, you winning? Best out of 3?
Yeah, they were.
Well, congratulations. Undefeated.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of intestinal fortitude for you to keep putting your name on the line like this, especially using a deck with no legendaries. So kudos to you, man.
Thanks.
And before one last thing, and then we're gonna hop into the Hog Cycle. I gotta ask though. Obviously, you're a really good player, and you can kind of pick up any deck, just like this Hog Cycle deck, even though you played Trifecta for so long. So I wanted to ask you one specific question that really covers the entire landscape of genres of decks out there in the game, and that is, do you count your opponent's Elixir? And if so, or if you have a good sense of your opponent's Elixir count during the entire match, are there any tips for people out there like me who sometimes can kind of space out and forget exactly where they are in the Elixir game?
You know, I don't actually count the Elixir during the match. I try and focus more on what I need to do. But if I notice that they play a lot of Elixir and I can counter really well, I still have those troops that I spent Elixir on, and then I can counterattack with that because I know they're low on Elixir. So it just kind of, playing good defense works into giving yourself a positive Elixir advantage and catching them off guard.
Absolutely, that's definitely a good philosophy to have, because whenever I try to count, I screw myself up more than I help myself. So it's definitely good advice there. The deck that we're going to be sharing today, there's only one legendary card, and it's the Princess. I think a lot of people have Princess, but what if they don't? Is there a good substitution for the Princess?
A good substitution would just be archers. I mean, they can sit back and shoot at the air and ground troops and just give you good defense behind.
Okay, so archers sub in for princess if you guys don't have it. So let's start on offense, and why don't you tell us a little bit about the win condition? Obviously, you're relying heavily on your Hog Rider. If I can speak today, you're relying heavily on your Hog Rider. So, what is like your favorite combination to cycle in with the Hog Rider? What's your win condition for this deck?
Early on in the game, I like to just play Hog by itself, get a little chip damage, figure out how they counter the Hog. And I know I have the Lightning in the deck, which Lightning is a big cost card. So later on in Double Elixir, if I notice that they're playing defense with an Ice Wizard Mega Minion for the Hog Rider, I'll throw in Ice Spirit Hog, and I'll have enough Elixir to play the Lightning, take out their Mega Minion and Ice Wizard, and most of the time it's a tower right there.
So yeah, that would be your big win condition, is if they're putting down 2 units next to their tower and you play the Hog, you use the Lightning, and then you've got, a free path for the Hog, and you've got a ton of damage off that tower. So you said that sometimes starting off a match, and we can see your replays here, and it's nice that you actually went 12-0 in a grand challenge right before we started recording. So I have a nice plethora of replays to choose from here. So we're going to try to show you guys something from every type, every archetype in the current meta. But you said you start off the match just playing the Hog Rider solo. Is there any reason why you don't just pair it up with an Ice Spirit or a Skeleton?
I used to do that a lot, and then I started thinking about it, and every card in the deck has its own purpose. Like if you throw down a Hog and some Skeletons, then you won't have the Skeletons to distract maybe a Prince or a Mini P.E.K.K.A. later on. So it's a good combo, but really they don't get that much damage. So it's better to just save the card, save your Elixir, and then counter what they have coming at you.
Okay, so that's pretty good advice. I mean, I think the reason that I did it, or I still do when I play Hog decks, is just to cycle back to the Hog faster. So you're using a card, and odds are they're going to be able to easily counter the Skeleton or the Ice Spirit. But in the chance that they don't, you get a little extra damage, and it cycles back to the Hog faster. But that actually leads me to my next question: it's a Hog cycle deck, so everything's really cheap alongside the Hog, besides the Inferno Tower and the Lightning. How often are you playing the Hog Rider? Are you cycling it as soon as possible, or I should say, when the Hog Rider card is available, are you playing it right away, or are you waiting till you're in a positive Elixir situation? Obviously, assuming you're not defending at the current moment.
So if I start off a game and I have a Hog Rider in there, I'll probably play it right away once I hit like 9 Elixir, just to see if they put down a collector or something, make a mistake early on, and then I can see how they counter it. But later on, like we were just talking about a minute ago, like playing the Hog solo is good, but in Double Elixir, you do play it with Skeletons, Ice Spirit, and you're ready with the Zap for whatever unit they drop, and then you can just cycle it faster. So really it's Double Elixir that you want to combo it, but I just kind of play the Hog, save what I have, because then I can better counter what they attack me with.
That's actually, this is really, really good stuff here. So it sounds like what you're saying is you're playing a little bit more cautiously, a little bit more defensively in the first 2 minutes of the match. And then once you know what your opponent has in terms of their deck, you're just going to combo with the best possible cards that suit whatever you're playing against. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit. Well, is there any other notes offensively? Like, what are you doing other than? Is there any time? Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Lightning spell. When are you going to use the Lightning spell in the first 2 minutes of the match?
The only time I would use the Lightning in the first 2 minutes is if it's an equal or a better Elixir trade. So if I can hit their tower and 2-3 Elixir units, then I'll do that if I have the Elixir to defend if he attacks. But usually, I know one of the biggest problems is, like, say it's the beginning of the match and you throw a Hog, you can't just play the Lightning on Inferno Tower, because then you just spent 10 Elixir and you won't have much to defend. So Lightning is like the poison, you kind of got to save it and play cautious with it. But once it's double Elixir, that's when you can really start throwing in some Lightnings and making positive Elixir trades.
Okay, but if you throw in, say, a Mega Minion to the mix, so your first play of the entire match is a Hog Rider all by himself in the lane. They put down an Inferno Tower, and then, or let's just say they put down, Inferno Tower is good. They put down an Inferno Tower, and then they put down, say, a Mega Minion for, it's really a misplay on their part because there's no need to. But at that time, would you go ahead and use your Lightning because they're pretty low on Elixir?
What I would probably do in that is if I have Princess, I would play it in the back. And then once a Mega Minion crosses to my side, I would use a 1 Elixir unit to distract it.
Okay, so you wouldn't take it. You wouldn't use the Lightning no matter what, it sounds like, on your first push.
Yeah, you'd want to save your Elixir to make sure you have enough to defend.
Okay. I like that. You're definitely a cautious player, but it's definitely worked for you, so I definitely can't argue with the results. I think one of my problems, and one of the reasons I'm kind of raising an eyebrow, is because I'm just way too aggressive, Like, I think if the opponent did play an Inferno Tower and whatever it may be, an Ice Wizard or a Mega Minion, I think I would Lightning right out the gate, so I'm going to take that to heart and try to adjust my gameplay accordingly as well. Now, defensively, obviously, you've taken out the cannon out of the very traditional version of the Hog Cycle, and you've added in the Inferno Tower. Can you talk a little bit about why you've made that swap, especially considering we're seeing a little bit less Giant in Goizen with the nerf to the Poison spell?
Yeah, I could have the cannon, but I think Inferno works better in the current meta because Expo decks are popular, Lava Hound decks. There's some Golem 3 Musketeer decks. Plus, the Royal Giant, I think, will make a little comeback from this update. So it just gives you that quick damage to be able to take down a heavy unit. And it just really helps your game.
I want to ask you about 2 cards that I've thought about maybe including in a deck like this. And one is Skeleton Army. And the Skeleton Army would be a sub for Skeletons, making it a little bit more expensive. And the other one is the Log for Zap. Can you talk a little bit about why you prefer the version that you have to those 2 alternative substitutions that I just mentioned?
Skeleton Army, that's a good card at this point in the stage, but I think upping the Elixir from 1 to 3 is just a little too much for the deck, because Skeletons offer good value for 1 Elixir. And if you're using 3 Elixir on something that you could have used for 1, then you're losing a little bit of Elixir during the match. And what was the other card you were?
It was the Log for Zap.
Log for Zap. I like the Zap still because it can still affect the air units. And if you can get like a good Zap on a just popped Lava Hound, then you can avoid some heavy damage on your tower. Also, with the Mega Minion being really popular, if you ever need to zap a bunch of minions down with a Mega Minion also, then you can just do that instead of having a log in your hand that doesn't hit the minions.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when you think about it too, like I was going to say, well, the log is better against Skeleton Army and everybody's playing Skarmy right now. But you know what? When you think about it, the zap is all you really need. If you have a hog on the tower and they play a Skeleton Army, I mean, the hog's still not going to be alive long enough to make it really matter if you miss a few skeletons, right? So
plus the zap just gives you that instant response instead of a log rolling down.
Exactly. No, yeah, it's definitely a good point about that. Well, you mentioned Siege decks, Expo decks specifically, and Hound decks. So those seem like they're going to be 2 really, really popular decks in the current meta after this last balance update. Can you talk a little bit about how you're dealing with those 2 specific decks? You can start with Expo decks. And how you're going to combat that type of deck with this deck.
Yeah, if I can figure out early on that they're playing an Expo deck, I usually try my best to not let them set up a good defense and then turn that into an Expo offense. I'll usually just kind of play slow and make them play off their game, kind of play some stuff around the map that they're not expecting. And once they put the Expo down... What were you saying?
Well, when you say play stuff around the map that they're not expecting, can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so if I notice that they're playing a knight in the back and pushing it towards the bridge, I usually just play a hog on the other side, so they have to split up their elixir, and they can't get a huge push going with that knight, because knight's a hard card in front of Expo. And really the best friend that you have in that situation is the Inferno Tower. If you can really get that Inferno Tower to lock onto the Expo quick, then it'll just shut his whole offense down completely.
Yeah, that definitely, Inferno Tower is definitely a great weapon. So if they get the Expo down and let's just pretend you only have 5 elixir, are you going to go ahead and play the Inferno Tower on the bridge, or are you going to place it in the middle of the map just to distract?
If I know that they have the elixir to play other cards in front of the Expo, then I'd probably try and play something that can attack those and at the same time save up my elixir until I can play the Inferno on the Expo.
Okay.
Because if they put down guards in front of the Expo, then the Inferno Tower is going to get shut down right away, and then you'll have a lot of problems.
Okay, that's great. So you're letting them place the Expo. Go ahead and get a little chip damage on your tower. Obviously, they'd be catching you at an elixir disadvantage anyway, so you're assuming you're going to take a little bit of loss. And then you're countering whatever they're going to throw at you, then getting your Inferno Tower down.
Yeah.
Okay. So against Hound decks, obviously you're going to be leaning heavily on your Inferno Tower again. Is there any other philosophy that you have? Let's just get specifically, your opponent plays the Lava Hound to open up the match. Are you going to go aggressive in the other lane, or what are you going to do?
Yeah, if I have Hog in my hand, that's when I would play it. Try and make them play their Tombstone or Minions or whatever they have, because they just spent 7 out of 10 of their elixir. They're not going to have a lot to defend your Hog. So once I make them split up their offense, it's kind of easy to counter what they defended with. And then I'll play the Inferno on the Hound and just take that away.
And then when the Hound is ready to pop, are you focusing mainly just defensively until the Hound pops, or are you still kind of mixing in a little offense in the opposite lane?
Yeah, I'll kind of, once I do my offensive push, then I'll stop and focus on playing defense against their Hound and whatever else they have.
Awesome. Okay, so let's kind of move into, before I let you go, move into some common mistakes with any sort of Hog Cycle deck, specifically this deck. What do you see people out there doing incorrectly that you'd say? I mean, we already talked about a few of those things, like, for example, always comboing the Hog early on with other more expensive or even less expensive cards and leaving themselves vulnerable defensively. Is there anything beyond that, specifically about the Hog in particular, that people do incorrectly?
Well, one of the most typical things that I see when people are playing Hog decks unsuccessfully is that they're just too aggressive. I mean, you think that playing aggressive will get you a lot of tower damage, but they're getting elixir just as fast as you are. So you have to realize that you can't just throw all your elixir and expect to win. You have to kind of chip away, play good defense, and then really attack late in the game.
That's great. That's definitely great advice. I mean, you're right. With a very cheap deck, you just totally hit the nail on the head. It's a cheap deck, so you almost get the illusion that you're overflowing with elixir at all times, right? But it's just not the case.
Yeah.
Your opponent, you're right. Your opponent is gaining elixir to defend whatever you're going to throw at them and then come back at you with that counter plus whatever else they have. I want to ask you one question about the Hog placement. Are you always placing your Hog more towards the far corner of the bridge, or are you placing him on the bridge, or is there ever a time that you place him more towards the center of the map?
Well, usually I like to play the Hog as far to the wall as I can, and hopefully that can avoid their defense if they play it. But if I notice that they have like a bowler or a knight that's right on the bridge, and I have a Mega Minion attacking that already, I'll put the Hog all the way to the middle, but still on the same side that he'll jump to the tower I want. So he can distract the troop for a second and then make his way to the tower with the Mega Minion behind it.
Okay, so basically to redirect something that you just don't want in your lane. So, I mean, that's a good follow-up question to that would be, how often, besides that one circumstance, are you using a Hog Rider in a pinch defensively?
Usually you would never use a Hog Rider defensively.
What I mean is, like, to kite away a unit. Let's pretend that there's, I don't know...
there's a Prince coming at you.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you only had 4 elixir and you had a Prince coming at you and you need to defend that tower, if you play him kind of one tile 1 to 2 tiles from the river on the other side, the hog will just run to the other tower and pull the prince to the middle, which will leave him vulnerable to both towers, and then he will switch his side that he started from.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I said, very rare, but I have been saved a few times. Just, you know, and maybe it wasn't the best play at the time. Maybe it was just kind of a reactionary thing, like, oh crap, I got to do something. But you know, the kiting hog has helped me a few times in the past.
Yeah.
So any shout outs or parting words before we let you go, man?
Nothing really. I love the support you give and all your great fans. Keep it up.
Thank you, man. It's great to have you on, and you've become definitely like the celebrity of my channel. So would you mind if is there a way for people to get in touch with you on Twitter or something, just to say hi and maybe ask you a question about the deck if they give it a shot?
Yeah, I have a Twitter, and it's Jordan C. Royale, and they can also add me on Facebook too if they want to watch my battles or friendly battle me, and that's also Jordan C. Royale.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll include those in the description below if you guys want to contact Jordan. And I just wanted to thank you so much again for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Tons of good advice. So hopefully we'll talk to you soon, man.
See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.